Welcome, everybody, to another rendition of our GrowTal podcast interview series with the amazing experts that we have on our platform. Today, we have Leslie Intriago. Am I pronouncing that properly?
Very good. Perfect.
Yeah. Super excited to have Leslie with us today. She is one of our superstars, has been with us, one of the longer standing people on the platform, has worked on a couple of different engagements with us, and is a very, very talented search marketer. And so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Brian. It's exciting to be here. We're both in California. I'm in the north part of the Bay, and you're in the south part of the Bay. So we're kind of in the same hood.
Yeah, exactly. Bay Area folks, which is good. It means that we've cut our teeth in digital marketing proper, kind of at the core of where it all started. Excited to kind of chat with you and just kind of have some questions in here about what it's like being a freelancer and your background. So let's just start with your background.
Sure.
Can you give us kind of a little bit into that?
Sure. I got started working in the entertainment industry. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be an actress, so that's kind of what got me out down there. But it was like in the early days of the internet, so it was a good time to get into digital marketing. I was temping for Sony Pictures Home Entertainment, and they were launching their digital asset library, and they kind of brought me in as a project manager. One thing led to another. I was there for 5 years, and I left with a passion and a thirst for digital marketing that grew from there.
Nice. And what did you do after Sony?
I consulted for different entertainment companies, production companies. I did a lot of project management on the digital marketing side and a lot of copywriting. I got to write synopses that were on like DVD packaging and stuff, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to do some entertainment marketing as well. I worked for a company called Filter Music Marketing or Music Magazine, and they had a whole marketing division. And I was on street teams, so not digital, but running around handing out pamphlets to people at concerts. But it's good fun. Entertainment.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. So, what brought you into the SEM side of things?
Well, my thirst actually started with SEO. Mm-hmm. I was always really, because I remember the world before the internet, and then I remember the birth of the internet and how excited I was just as a person, where there's all this information that you have access to. Everything is at your fingertips, really. And I started just kind of getting obsessed with finding things through search engines. I got really obsessed with the Google bomb, if you remember, like if you could manipulate search engines, like the big one was when George W. Bush was president, it was big failure or something like that. Mm-hmm. And if you typed in big failure, it was like the George W. Bush page was like the number one result. And that was all a result of using big failure in the anchor text and then linking to that page. And I just thought, wow, that's super cool. I love that, you can manipulate search engines that way. Mm-hmm. So I had a friend that did SEO, and he kind of schooled me and told me how it worked. And I took a lot of classes in SEO and read a lot of books in it. And I finally got a job helping a retailer with their SEO. And then he says, hey, I want to start doing this, this advertising and search engines too. Do you think you can do that? And I was like, hey, yeah, definitely interested. So he sent me to these Google sponsored seminars for success. I don't think they have them anymore, but they were here in the Bay Area. So I basically learned from like Google people how to properly use Google ads. And that was over 10 years ago. And I've been doing it ever since, both SEO and SEM, but primarily SEM at this stage of my career.
Yeah. What's changed in the last 10 years?
A
lot.
Working. Well, the funny thing is working mostly aside from the last year, which has been just so different. I was working mostly for companies. I worked a lot as a freelancer early on when I was in entertainment. And then my mother would always tell me, that's not career stability. Like, you need a real job. You need a job with a pension and health insurance. And I kind of had that drilled in my head. So living up in the Bay Area, I was like, I want a real job. I want a real company. I want job security and my health insurance paid and all of that fun stuff. So I've been working for companies, but what I really realized is that there is no such thing as job security.
Not
It's
in
a
startup
myth.
land. Yeah.
No, it isn't. I mean, even when you're not working for a startup, like my last job, I was working 4 years for a travel company, and it was great. You know, it was a great job. I loved it. I think they liked me. I got a raise every year. I got to travel. I was always given good feedback. And then all of a sudden, they said, "We're closing the California office. If you want to keep your job, you need to move to Arizona." And I was like, I don't really like Arizona. So suddenly, I found myself out of a job.
Yeah.
And look at what's happening with COVID and how many people are not, through no fault of their own, they don't have a job. So job security, it's a myth. It's not real.
Yeah. No, I think it's tough. You're always at the whim of other folks, which is one reason why, we're big believers in freelancing,
Exactly.
obviously with GrowTal. And so how's it been in terms of getting into freelancing, and what's that journey been like?
It's funny because when my job ended, it was about a year ago. I thought, well, and I had still done occasional like side gigs through people I knew that knew I did, knew SEO. So it was primarily SEO jobs. I did some audiobook recording too. So I thought, okay, I'll do that because I don't want to like just take a job just to be in a hurry to get a job and it's not the right fit. And I wanted to stay in the travel industry. So I pinged my network. I started working with an agency that I know in Marin and doing some Google Ads management for them. And it was part-time and looking for a job, interviewing with a lot of travel companies. And then all of a sudden COVID happened. And I was like, oh no, like this isn't going to happen. Like travel industry is going to be in trouble for a while now.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, okay, well, what now? I really don't know what I want to do. And I thought, well, you know what? I think I'm going to keep doing the consulting if I can continue to get the work. But the only like other alternative I had to getting consulting work was Upwork, which I had known about through my last job because we actually hired freelancers through Upwork.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized it's a lot different experience when you're on the freelancer side than when you are on the business side.
Sure.
For example, with Upwork, you have to buy something called credits in order to bid for a job. So you have to actually pay to be considered for the job, which I think is a bit ridiculous. And those credits expire. Like I just got an email this week telling me that my credits are going to expire and I need to use them or I'm going to lose them. It's like, wait a second, I paid for this.
It's terrible.
And Upwork takes 20% of what you make.
That's a lot. Yeah.
It is a lot.
So you have to pay for it.
Exactly. And they don't do any work. So it's like, but when you're on the business side, it's a very nominal fee. It's definitely a model that is designed to help businesses and kind of stick it to the freelancers. So I was really happy to find GrowTal because GrowTal has been fantastic. GrowTal is other digital marketers. So I feel like I'm working with like-minded people. They understand me. They understand the business. They understand the industry, and they're not looking out for just the businesses. They're looking out for everybody. So it's been great. It's helped me be able to work full time.
Well, obviously we're excited to have you on board and love that feedback. And the other thing that, with Upwork that we've heard from the hiring side is that, and I know from hiring people, and I don't know if you experienced this, was it's really hard to find good quality because they don't know marketing, right? And they don't really know any of the specialties that they're in, if you ask me. And so you as the buyer or hirer have to sift through so many different resumes and things like that. And there's a tendency then to start looking for, okay, well, what's my lowest cost option that's going to get me what I need? And invariably, I think you end up hiring someone who isn't a true expert. And
exactly.
One of the things that we're trying to accomplish with GrowTal is to find people like yourselves who have true expertise in your field, SEO and SEM. So when somebody does bring you on board, that they know they're going to bring on someone that knows what they're doing, right?
Exactly. It's low risk. And I think Upwork is very high risk because you don't know what you're getting. You're just relying on, reviews and somebody's profile to tell you this person's qualified for the job, but you haven't actually, that person hasn't been vetted for the job.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we know anything about reviews, they can be manipulated and go on Amazon and who knows what you get.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so you've been now doing freelancing full time for what, going on a year? How's it been? Do you think you'll ever go back?
Oh, that's hard to say. At this point, I'm actually happy. There's pros and cons to everything, but the biggest benefit of freelancing is getting paid by the hour.
Hmm.
My last job, I was on salary, and we grew a lot in the time that we were there. We were acquired after a couple of years, so I had a lot of big projects that I worked on, and sometimes I was working 60, 70, even 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting paid overtime or anything. I'm just, taking one for the team.
Mhm.
And when you're working as a freelancer, you're getting paid by the hour. So if you want to work more hours and you feel like, you can take on more hours, you can, and it's definitely more lucrative.
Yeah. And that's one of our big arguments. I think, in startup culture up here in Silicon Valley, I've found that there's a general consensus that engineers are the people who are the most valued, right? And they get paid the most. And a lot of these sort of product and engineering based companies, I think, discount the value of marketing, in which I would say that the marketing is actually more important in a lot of cases than engineering, unless you're a very product centric company, a very tech centric company. But if you're going to talk about a direct to consumer business, for example, differentiating Casper mattresses from Lisa mattresses, I mean, that was all marketing, right? And so it becomes really important, but it's still not recognized, I think, from the financial aspect of it. And so I've seen a lot of marketers, in my opinion, be underpaid with the promise of a big exit in the future. But we all know that the exits usually don't happen, right? Most startups don't actually get to the point where there's a huge exit. They might have a small buyout at some point, or a lot of them end up shutting their doors in the long run. And so marketers are forced to play the game of jumping from company to company. And that works out well as an engineer if you're going to be paid a couple $100,000 a year. But as a marketer, you may be undervalued. And to your point, if you go independent, now you can demand a higher hourly wage than you might have gotten paid working for those businesses directly. And you can charge by the hour, so you can take on more accounts. And if you work more hours, you make more money. So, in our experience in running GrowTal, we're seeing a number of the people on our platform make significantly more money than they did working full time. And I personally think that that's, it's a really good thing for the people on the platform, and you get a diversity of experience in working with a lot of different businesses as well. So,
Absolutely. That's
yeah.
another thing that I love about it is you get exposed to so many brilliant minds working with all these different companies and different technologies, because every company, there is no cookie cutter formula for the technology that people are going to use. So you get exposed to a lot of these different technologies, which
Yeah.
I think kind of expands your marketing portfolio of skills and experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good. So, specifically in terms of the types of projects you're working on, what's exciting to you right now?
What's exciting to me? Can I talk about
Sure.
my, okay. Well, working for you guys and doing your digital marketing is exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Love having you doing
It is,
art.
and knowing the brand, but I'm working with a wound care company. I just took over their advertising, so I'm
Mhm.
restructuring it, and that's really exciting to do. I didn't know anything about wound care, but their lead generation, so that the way they track their offline leads is really interesting. They use a lot of cool technologies. They have a brilliant digital marketing squad of people. They have these daily scrums, so I think that's really an interesting new industry for me to tap into. Also, with SEM, there's different, medical challenges when it comes to policy in Google, and it helps to kind of understand that industry better.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think that that's good. What about, so some of those technologies, can you give us a little bit more insight into like the types of stuff that you're seeing that's a little bit more cutting edge?
Well, like one of the things that I was recently introduced to is LeadsRx, which is a multi-touch attribution platform. It tells you basically, it outlines the customer journey. So you can see like how many different, you can actually look on a granular level, tracking a lead and saying like how many of these channels contributed to that lead, and it's broken down for you in exquisite detail. I actually went to a demonstration from the tech lead for this company who was going through like a few examples of how we got this actual person, they're recruiting physicians, how they got this physician and the whole journey to it, and how certain channels are undervalued. And that's typically like the struggle is, you know, people, especially with what I do, which is PPC management, is people don't really understand the value because they just say, oh, this is what I'm getting, but they don't see that there's a full journey. Maybe that person didn't click on your ad and immediately, you know, convert. Maybe they came back later through an email or through organic, but that was the first impression of your company that stuck with them.
Right.
And I think that's important, and why that platform is super cool, because it does give, you know, proper credit to all the channels.
Yeah. The multi-touch attribution is one of those really difficult things. And I'm always amazed at how many companies are still measuring things on a last click, right?
Yeah.
Where did the last click come from? Obviously, that's what should get the results. And obviously, that's the easiest place to measure. But it's not, you know, doesn't tell the story of the journey at all, right? Because oftentimes
exactly.
It's a direct hit, or it's a branded keyword, or it's email, to your point, right? But how do they discover the brand in the first place? How do they discover the solution in the first place? And that's arguably more important. But then you have to make sure you nurture them and bring them all the way through the funnel, right? Steph, are you up to date on the iOS 14 changes?
I am. Yeah.
They're a doozy. How do you see those affecting SEM? Do you have any, is Google giving any clues into how iOS 14 is going to affect your SEM campaigns?
Well, it's not like Facebook, where Facebook is all of it. I think Facebook is really funny. The way that they're, you know, saying it's going to affect the small business. No, it's going to affect Facebook.
You know, I don't know. I mean, I think all of the companies that we work with on the Facebook side of things are heavily reliant on Facebook to drive new customers. And they run, it's not like they're printing money, right? So they have fairly thin margins, and they have very specific cost per acquisition goals. And if you take away Facebook's machine learning capabilities, and they cannot get the signal back end to drive the ad targeting that they do, the quality of the ad targeting is going to drop, which means that it's going to get more expensive for those advertisers. And I worked at Facebook for 4 years, and I joined in 2013, left in 2017, and have largely focused on helping direct-to-consumer businesses, ever since 2015. And what I can say is that there are tons of businesses that have built themselves on the back of Facebook advertising. Similar to, there was a boom in 2004 to 2012 where businesses were built on Google advertising, right? And not to say that there aren't still ones built on Google advertising, but it's gotten a lot more competitive, so it's more difficult to kind of get in, right? And get discoverability because all the keywords are been bid up by, major Fortune 500 companies. But on the Facebook side, because it's a discoverability platform, companies like Movement Watches or Casper Mattresses or all these things, Dollar Shave Club, all those companies really got built on the back of Facebook and Instagram ads, and nobody can match their algorithms. TikTok, Snap, none of them can, and they're going to run into all the same iOS problems. And there's so much signal that comes out of iOS, it's really going to kill the machine learning, and I think it's going to really hurt these businesses. So I mean,
I do too.
You can call me biased, but I think it's.
But I think it's going to hurt Facebook too, because people are going to be less. They're not going to want to invest as much if they're not seeing their return either. And I think Facebook relies a lot on it more. Like there's isn't there more mobile activity on Facebook? Like
Oh yeah,
that.
ton. Yeah, I mean, and that's why Google probably won't be affected as much. But I mean, mobile search is really big on Google, and I don't know exactly. And this is, a little bit of a point where it's probably to be determined. But how is the Google search engine and Safari going to be affected in terms of driving back conversion signal to the businesses who are advertising on Google Ads on mobile? Because my understanding of their privacy changes is that they're not going to allow IDFA, they're not going to allow identifiable information to get back to these engines unless people opt in to saying they're okay with that. But most people are probably not going to opt into it just because they've been scared by the media for so long that somehow these companies are misusing their data, which they just aren't. It's just wrong, right? But because, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal wants to scare everyone so they can sell more ads, they have convinced everybody that this is a problem.
Well, Google is always going to have the upper hand because you get people while they're searching for it. So they're that's not, but what you get, they also have what I love about Google, and especially it's going to hurt their display network, I think, more than it's going to hurt their search network, because display is where you get to layer all that data, all those buckets, like, the audiences, and that stuff is what's really what I think makes the display network so successful with Google. And it's going to impact that negatively, remarketing too. It's,
YouTube will probably be the same deal.
Yeah, it's going to get worse from here, though. I think, it started with GDPR, and then there was California had their own version of GDPR last year, and now there's this, and it's just going to keep going. And it's one of those things that's going to continue to be a thorn in the side of digital marketers. I get it as a consumer a little bit. Sometimes I'm really creeped out when I'm served an ad and I'm like, okay, way too much about me. But as a marketer, it's like, I salivate at this stuff. I think it's amazing that you can target people so granularly, and it's really a shame.
But what's funny is that I used to talk about this a lot because when I got into digital advertising, I started realizing that personalization was a thing, right? That you could actually do personalized advertising. And I'd watch TV, and I used to always joke, like, I'm at the time, a 22-year-old male, right? And it's like, what am I seeing commercials for diapers for, right? Like, I'm not married, I don't have children, but you're showing me diaper commercials or Tampax commercials or whatever, right? Like, this is not personalized at all. This is a waste of the advertiser's money, number one. And number two, for me at the time, and I think for most consumers, it's a waste of my attention. My attention should not be placed on this, and it's more of a nuisance than it is a value add. And so I would argue that personalized ads are a massive value add because you learn about the products and services that can be actually beneficial and provide you real value in your life. And because it's personalized, does it feel creepy? Well, maybe, but the reason why is because it actually is for you, right? And if people were smart enough, if they just took the time to dig into how it works, they would realize, I don't know, if I serve you an ad, I don't know that you're getting served the ad, right? The advertiser is not buying this data from Google or Facebook and saying, Leslie Intriago is interested in this thing. They're just taking affinity data that Google and Facebook have gathered. And even that is hashed in a million different ways. There are 3 people at each company that might be able to go in and figure out who Leslie Intriago is and what ads are getting serviced. And even then, there's a whole bunch of regulatory stuff that says they shouldn't be doing that, and they'd probably get fired if they got in that deep, right? There's a ton of privacy built on top of it, and people just don't understand how it works. And so they're just running around scared because people are telling them that they should be.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, I think that, it's like tailor-made advertising for you. I mean, who wants to have blanket advertising thrown at them? Don't you want to see ads that are going to appeal to you so you're introduced to things that you're going to like and want? But I'm afraid it's not going to be going anywhere.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, we're On the agency side of our business, we're looking at doing much more on the media mix model front. So we can start to, which is an old tactic, right? But at least you can start to tell that attribution story of, hey, which channel is driving what conversions, right? And if you get enough signal from each channel, you can start to make better decisions and build more and more complex models, because, a lot of these things, if it keeps coming, the GDPRs of the world and CCPAs, and now the iOS 14 changes, and you're going to have cookies go away in 2022, right? So we're going to have to build in some different infrastructures that may not be as directly measurable, but at least statistically measurable. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with iOS.
Yeah. Well, this was a good tangent. I enjoyed this. Anything else you want to add today? Anything else about your experience with GrowTal, or any advice to freelancers?
I think it's a good time for freelancers right now because there's such a demand because of COVID. I feel really lucky personally. I know businesses that are struggling because of the pandemic, but I think people, if you have digital marketing skills, it's a good time to be a freelancer. There's lots of work. A lot of companies are moving things online. And I think that stay away from Upwork and go to GrowTal if you're a freelancer.
Hey.
And you'll be happy.
Perfect. Thanks, Leslie. I really appreciate it.
You'll stay busy. My pleasure, Brian.